I'm Rob Lucuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Oscar nominee and Grammy, Emmy, and Tony Award winner, Cynthia Erivo. Cynthia, first of all, Drift is a real experience. It's emotional, and it really opened my eyes to lots of things that we're going to talk about. But first of all, you were really pivotal in getting this made after the late Bill Paxton passed away. What does it mean to you personally that this labor of love has finally been made?
You know what? As you just said that, this is the first time I thought this particular thought. I'm really glad we got it made for Bill, because I know that he really wanted it to be made. It's so strange because I hadn't put two and two together. I think it's a really wonderful thing that we were able to do something that was one of Bill's last wishes. So that's a really special thing. And I'm really proud of the fact that we put all the work we could possibly have put into this to have it be a real thing, to have it be real, to have it be realized, because it wasn't easy. We worked really hard. I feel like it's a really special piece, and I felt like it when I read the script. And so to be able to speak about it this way, to know that I put as much effort as I possibly could, to know that I was active in making it happen, makes me feel really pleased, because it feels like it definitely is like part of me. I feel like it's one of my babies, which is really nice. Yeah.
Now it's out there in the world. It will be shortly for everybody to see. So you portrayed Jacqueline, a Liberian refugee. What I found so absorbing, honestly, was your ability to project this vulnerability and fragility, but also warmth and resilience without much dialogue at all.
Yeah.
Is it difficult to do that with so much of her presence early on being so internalized?
I think on first glance, it was a little bit daunting, because you're sort of, how do I portray the things that she's feeling without the words? I know, and you know, everything is described, the world around her is described, what's happening is described, but it's up to me how I play it, how I convey it. But then I sort of, if you take a step back, you realize that as human beings, that's what we do. If you remove the words, we're communicating consistently with our bodies, with our eyes, with our hands, with the way we breathe, with a sigh, or the way we tilt our heads, you know, the frown. All of those things are non-verbal communications that we use a lot of. And often that's how we take our cues from people as to how a person is feeling or what a person is actually saying. So words can come out of a person's mouth, but if you see a person and you see their face, they might be saying something completely different, you know? And I just sort of lent on that. And once you, I guess for me, I just had her in my mind. Like, I knew what her story was. I knew what she was going through. I knew that it would be hard for her to trust, to speak what she was going through. And for someone who had been through such trauma, sometimes silence is the result. So I think when you want so much to communicate, but you don't have the words, I just kept thinking, what would that be like? What is that? When you have things to say, but you don't have the language, you don't have the words yet. And so that's sort of what I was leaning on. Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to give you credit though, because you could have just been very stone-faced and very, very introspective and not letting us in. But you did do that. You did let us in a lot. I think it's because of the way that you and director Anthony Chen, I assume, collaborated on set. What was he? This is his first English language feature.
Yes.
He's a really acclaimed Singaporean director.
Yeah.
To me, it seems so far removed, someone from that part of the world filming a movie in Greece about a Liberian refugee. So how did that work, and what was it like working with him?
I mean, we're in Greece and it's tough. We're all like working at things, trying to make things happen. And I think that he had to trust in the end that I was okay. You know, he has this wonderful way of creating the world. And once the world is created, he kind of had to just hand the baton off to me and let me go with it. And if he needed to adjust anything or shift anything, he would let me know, and we'd have a conversation, and that's sort of how it was like a push and pull, really, you know. That's kind of how it would work. Because it's also, he jumped on this project and trusted that I would be able to take this character and make her whole. And I think that's the prime thing you need when you're doing this work, trust, because there aren't that many words, you know. So you have to be left to emote or to convey. Yeah.
There's a lot of elements to the film that we should talk about. The internalized life of this woman is one, obviously. The other thing is, I'm kind of almost ashamed to even say this, because, you know, in the state of the world right now, there are so many displaced people dealing with trauma in the Middle East and so on and so forth. Just imagine how many thousands or millions of Jacquelines there are out there, right, who are human beings and who are dealing with that trauma that we sometimes forget about, because in the hustle of life. Does that occur to you, that the film like this can maybe open our eyes to that kind of plight?
Yeah, I strangely enough, it's one of the first things I thought of when I read it. I thought of the fact that this kind of story is rarely seen. The story of a person who could disappear if you didn't know she was there, right? But just because you don't know she's there, it doesn't mean that she doesn't exist, right? And I guess I wanted, when people watch this and see my face as this person, right, that it might switch something on for you to be like, oh, it could be anyone. It could be anyone. I could pass by a person, not know who they are, and not realize that they're going through something terrible, or have come from something terrible, or are moving towards something terrible, or just trying to make it to the next day. We just don't know. And so hopefully it will force us to think about being more caring and considerate about whoever we pass, whoever we see, whoever we meet, because we just don't know. And I hate the word tolerance, because it isn't that. It's more about, I guess it's an openness to humanity, a humanness, you know, realizing that we are all human and we are all going through things, and we don't know what those things are. And if we don't make space for the things that people are going through, we may end up letting people slip through the cracks, and that should never happen.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day and I'll pass someone thinking, oh, that guy's really annoying me. But, you know, that person's probably going through stuff
Right.
that I don't know. That's empathy. That's what films and art, music, that's what it's supposed to do, as well as other things. Like, for example, when Jacqueline's on the beach early on and she meets that Italian tourist, those Italian tourists, the husband's quite dismissive, the wife or the girlfriend isn't. And that was a really beautiful moment, when we start to see that Jacqueline is dealing with some pretty heavy stuff that we then find out about later. So the question is, when you are having to do scenes like that, where you're just trying to build the character, have you done a lot, like a ton of prep prior to production for you to get in that headspace, or does it happen quite quickly when you're about to arrive on set?
Well, what was wild is we shot all of that huge scene at the very top. So everything you see in the flashbacks, we shot at the very beginning of this movie. It's the first thing we shot. So when you see me on the beach, I have all of that in my head already. I've seen it all, right?
That's cool.
So those are my memories. So, and those days when we shot those scenes over a week. So we spent a week in that home, in the raid, with the massacre. All of those things happened, and I had them and I stored them in my memory bank. And you know, I always say your body doesn't know when it's not real. Your body is just experiencing. And so when you put your body and your mind through that, it believes that's what happened. I can still remember how it smelled. I can still remember what it felt like. I can still remember how cold the floor was, how cold it was when I put my face to the cupboard, what it looked like when I looked up and a cipher was laying on the table. I can remember all of those things. Those are the memories. So when you look at her on the beach, those things are a part of her already. And I think it was really important tough, but really important to shoot it that way, because it meant that everything I did from then on was informed by a thing I had already experienced. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really smart way to block this film, because yeah, that just makes total sense to me. But on the other hand, you
Yeah.
come into this new project and you're doing that straight off the
Yeah.
bat. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure, and it was hard. And those days are really hard because you're shooting things like that multiple times. So by the end of it, I was raw. There was nothing I couldn't, there's a point where if you can switch it off sometimes, but by the end, when we had done it, I couldn't switch it off. I couldn't switch it off anymore. And so we had to we were lucky because we'd come to the end of it, but my internal switch wasn't switching off anything. It was all in there now, and that is tough, because that whatever happens there still will inform the rest of the experience. And so I desperately wanted to, one, do this piece the justice that it needed. And two, there's this wonderful journey that you have when you meet her at the very beginning. You see her when it all feels really good, and bit by bit it starts to get chipped away until it really is just horrific. But you get to learn her a little bit. So when you meet her at the beach, you don't know, but you get to find out bit by bit that she's had a life. This is where she came from. She didn't just appear on the beach out of nowhere. She had a life, and that's the thing that she's still holding on to, when you meet her.
Yeah.
And I think even little costume ideas, I got to keep my nose ring and some of my piercings. And I don't know why, but they were so important, because I thought that it's such a connection to a modern world that you don't necessarily connect to someone who is a refugee. You don't connect. It feels like they drift from the modern world into a different world of their own. And I felt like I wanted her to still be a part of something that was modern. I wanted her to be of the now when you met her as a refugee. So that nose ring, those piercings are still a part of who she was, but they've taken on a new meaning as a part of who she is now.
Makes so much. That's why films like this rehumanize the people that have been dehumanized over the years, right? And I really appreciate that. I've been on the beach in the Mediterranean where I've met people from Morocco or Tunisia who were selling me jewelry, and they have a story too. And it's just enough, you know what I mean? It's just fascinating to me. The other big part of the film, which really blew me away, honestly, is the friendship, because I love Alia Shawkat. She's a very funny, great actress, but in this film, she just blew me away. What do you think about her performance and working with her?
I was obsessed with her before we started working together. I watched Search Party, and when I say I devoured every episode, and was so excited when there was a possibility of her doing this. And then when we finally met, I was just like, this is so awesome. She has such a wonderful sensibility. She's unbelievably generous, and unbelievably kind. And I really loved working with her. I think she is really special. And I don't know that people realize how special she is, but I loved working with her. I'm so glad we got to do this together, because I can't imagine doing this with anyone else.
I really want people to see the film, not for just the reasons we discussed and your amazing, beautiful performance, but her as well. I wasn't, no disrespect to her, but I wasn't expecting what I got from her. And I'm just really, she took my breath away. Both of you did. Okay, now we're running out of time. So there's other stuff I want to talk about. This song. So you collaborated with Laura Mvula on this. So what led to that collaboration and writing this beautiful song together?
I'd met Laura Mvula before, and I love her. We've had a relationship for a while, and we've been friends for a while, but I always make playlists for productions that I'm doing. I always like make a playlist for the character, and when I was on a run in Greece, and I had put the song Father on this playlist, and for some reason, this one time when it played, I was like, oh my gosh, I think this felt like the soundtrack of the piece. And I knew automatically that if we were going to write a song for the end of this film, it was going to be with Laura, because I think I think Laura is extraordinary, and two, I think she deeply understood the language of this piece, even without knowing what this piece was. So when I asked her if she would co-write with me, she said yes, and I sent her the film. She sent back an idea. I loved the idea. So we got into a studio, we sat, we wrote, and we created the song. And,
Wow.
and I don't know, it just was like kismet, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a really beautiful song. It's got this gorgeous percussive bass line overlaid with these haunting and then often soaring vocals.
Yeah.
And to me, as a layperson, I'm even kind of feeling there was some Eastern or Mediterranean influences in
Yeah.
it. Was there a spark of inspiration to especially with the musical part, not just necessarily the vocals?
She really connected with the very last moment where she dives into the water. There was something about that scenery and seeing her in the water and of the water that she really connected with. And I was like, go with that, because that's where we leave her. And that's also like at the end of something and the beginning of something else when we get to that moment. And I think that's what the inspiration was, that sort of that and the movement forward, because it's slow. It's like that slow, steady movement that she has to do throughout this movie. She's moving all the time, and it's not necessarily like fast until she's panicked, right? And I think that's what we sort of clung on to. And it was both the use of our voices, the use of her instruments. She played on this, we sung on it. Our voices are used both percussively and in the vocals. So we played and took elements from what we had seen in this movie and what I showed her in this movie, and to create this new piece.
Beautiful. Love the song. I want to see it performed at the Oscars. Two more questions before I let you go, because we're Gold Derby, so we can't help ourselves. Number one, you've won lots of awards. You're almost at the EGOT. I know we probably talk about it all the time. In 2019, you were a double Oscar nominee for actress and song. It doesn't happen very often. Mary J. Blige, Lady Gaga, Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah.
But what's been your number one awards highlight today? I have an idea what you might say, but I'm curious to see what is your number one.
I mean, I want to say the Tonys.
That's what I was thinking.
I want to say the Tonys, because I just did when I was new and I was having the time of my life. This role had changed everything for me. And just the way it happened was so wild and crazy. It was like a whirlwind, and that night was crazy. We were performing as well. It's one of those moments that I will never forget, because it really was a moment that I think changed everything for me.
That was, to me, like the lightning bolt of your career. And it was a beautiful moment too, by the way.
Thank you.
Final question. I live in a household full of wicked obsessives. So
Yeah.
I don't have a choice. I actually have to ask you this.
Go on.
Or they will kick me out, especially my kids.
Yeah.
So can you just tell me everything about Wicked, your role as Elphaba, and I promise you won't get fired.
Okay. Everything about Wicked.
About your role in it, and the movie that we're all dying to see.
I have to say, I'm really enjoying her. She surprised me, actually. She's really surprised me. I knew she was deep feeling. I knew that she was thoughtful and sometimes insecure, and sometimes she has everything from happiness to rage to, you know, indifference. I've been really enjoyed playing her. I am green. It is practical makeup, actually green, and it takes a while, and everyone's working very, very hard to make it happen and to put everything together. We are singing live pretty much all the time. I am doing my own stunts, and I'm having the time of my life. It's wild and crazy, and there's a lot of work that goes into this. We are working really hard, and I hope people enjoy it, because whatever we're feeling on set, I hope everyone else gets to feel, because it's really, there's a really special atmosphere that's happening on set, and it's sort of disarmed me completely when I'm there. I love it very much. So yeah.
We can't bloody wait. It's like let's literally hurry up because we're dying to see it. But in the meantime,
I'm coming. I promise.
But in the meantime, everybody check out Drift when it hits theaters and streaming, because it's a really beautiful film. And Cynthia, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me. This is lovely.